After a season cruising Scotland, it's time to give Delfino a little bit of TLC. She's a 20-year-old boat and we sailed her hard, so it's time to head to Plymouth and get hauled out.
It's day one of our yard period. We've got a good little weather window for copper coating over the next couple of days. So priority for today is to prep for that. So we're going to have to sand all of the areas back where we're going to apply copper coat. And what else do we need to do? And get all the things out that we need.
So Coppercoat it's a type of paint that you put on the bottom of the boat which stops growth, which slows us down. Coppercoat is a ton of very fine copper powder that's suspended in the epoxy before it cures, and that copper prevents growth. It's a biocide. One of the advantages of Coppercoat is that it can last 10 or even 15 years if it's applied well and maintained over the years. So we don't actually know how old our Coppercoat is. We think that it's pretty old. We think that it's 10 or maybe 12 years old even. What's happening is it's starting to go a bit thin in places, and that's going to degrade its ability to act as an anti-fouling, to stop the stuff growing on it. But it's also starting to expose the barrier coat, which is the waterproof layer, and we kind of want as much waterproofness as possible. It prevents what's called blistering, where water can get into the fiberglass of the hull. What we've noticed in a few areas of the hull, particularly I think where there's a lot of stress, is that these sort of pinholes have appeared, and it's not clear whether there's Coppercoat in them or what's going on. So I think our approach is just going to be to sand them down and fill those areas, re-Coppercoat all of those areas in their entirety.
Had a more successful day in the boatyard today. Sanded down everything, prepped, planned out what we're going to do over the next couple of days. Yeah, feeling like we're making progress. I'm not feeling like I'm hating it quite as much as I've hated previous boatyard periods, which is good. Looking forward to a nice evening, resting, and ready to do it all again tomorrow. What are we doing today?
Today we're prepping the hull for copper coating.
What, spot copper coating? We're not doing the whole thing, we're just patching up.
Yeah, we're just patching up. So you'll see along the hull that there's just a few patches like here where it's gone thin. And we've just sanded it back either to primer or to fiberglass in this case. So hopefully we can fill these holes today with slightly thickened epoxy and then prime them with intercoat. And then tomorrow we'll just copper coat all of these little sections. There's quite a few of them along the keel and stuff.
While we waited for the epoxy to cure, we tackled fixing our VHF. Last week, we'd pulled apart our nav station and found some corroded connections that needed replacing.
Poor left hand. Poor left hand. It's getting brutalized.
Delfino, test 3, test 3, test 3. Do you want me to keep going? Delfino, test 5. I'm towards the end of the breakwater by where we were on the visitor pontoon. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool, coming back.
With the VHF fixed, the epoxy had had enough time to cure and we could move on to primer.
Skin irritation, cause respiratory irritation, harmful to aquatic life. Keep away from heat, hot surfaces, sparks, flames, no smoking, only use outdoors, avoid release to the environment. If inhaled, do a load of things.
You will spontaneously combust.
If in eyes, call the poison centre.
Yeah.
Good thing I'm wearing my sunglasses then.
Nothing says safety like Ray-Bans.
While we waited for the primer to dry, we applied the first layer of traditional anti-foul on the areas that don't have Coppercoat under the waterline. At some point, one of Delfino's previous owners had painted Trilux on all the metal areas of the boat and the bottom of the keel, so we've carried on maintaining that. If anyone knows why this is the case, please leave it in the comments below, as we'd be curious to know why Coppercoat can't go everywhere under the waterline.
Pretty successful day today. Did the primer for where we're going to Coppercoat hopefully tomorrow, and did a first coat of Trilux on all the metal areas under the waterline. And now taking our laundry back to the Airbnb. Right, let's go.
Come on then. So one of the problems with Coppercoat is that it can be a real pain in the ass to apply. It's a water-based epoxy, so it's very sensitive to humidity and temperature. When you're applying all the layers, you need to do it in a way that's called wet on tacky. So before one layer dries entirely, it becomes a bit tacky, and then you apply the next layer. And the final aspect is that you need to create a very even distribution of all of those copper particles so that you've got this effective anti-fouling at the end. And all of that means that you need to have a long period of dry weather. It needs to be within certain temperature bounds, and you need to be really rigorous and prepared before you apply your Coppercoat. And so, of course, it's the UK, and it's very rare that we have 4 or 5 days of uninterrupted, lovely sunshine in the right temperature bounds in the middle of October. I think it needs to be over 12 degrees even at night. But for this period, we had it. And so we took the opportunity to touch up the Coppercoat. So because it needs to go wet on tacky, the overcoating interval, the time between the layers, is a couple hours. It's pretty short. But it means that we had this day where we had all of these awkward times where we've just filled it with other jobs. We Triluxed everything under the waterline. We did a bit of teak maintenance. We had a celebratory beer when we sensed the end of this day was approaching. And a long list of other little jobs.
Coppercoat round 4. Might have one more to go after this, but then we should be done. Fingers crossed we can get the tape off okay. Fifth and final coat, how do you feel?
Tired, ready to go home. I mean, we haven't even done that much. Imagine if you're doing the whole hull. I mean, I think you'd need like a crew of people.
Yeah. Round 5.
Fueled by beer and chips this time. look great, you know.
Hope so.
So, the windscreen. Yeah, the windscreen. I love the windscreen on this boat. It provides so much protection, and I think it just looks cool. It gives it sort of a 1960s race car look, which I think is awesome. However, it does leak, and when we bought this boat, it wasn't in the best condition. There was a couple of problems with it. One is that all of the caulking around the bottom was going really moldy and failing, and the second issue was that a lot of the screws that held it down onto the cabin top were creating big cracks in the gel coat, and that was starting to concern me. Those cracks, if you don't tackle them, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger, and they let water in underneath into the fiberglass. There's no protection for the fiberglass, so figured might as well take the windscreen off, redo the caulking, fix up the gel coat. Step one was removing all of the caulking, which took a while. It's a surprising depth under there. We really had to get in there with our knives, and I mean, it wasn't too bad, but it took a few hours. And Laura's looking at me going like, no, it was pretty bad.
It was horrible. It was so gross and wet in there, and mouldy and stinky and disgusting.
It was pretty gross, yeah. But I've done worse boat jobs, but yeah, that was pretty bad. But we got it off. Once we got rid of all the caulking, it felt sturdy enough that we could just lift it in one piece, so that's what we did. Just moved it forward. At some point I'm going to have to fully deconstruct it, but that's for another day. I think it's all more or less ready to just pop off, eh? What do you think? Here and here, best spots? I didn't get rid of this, maybe I should.
Over there. Did it go over that way or not?
Yeah, that might be as far as it goes.
Just so it goes like that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. You've done this before, haven't you? Okay.
Yeah.
God, it's soaking under here.
Yeah. That's why.
It's absolutely soaking. Look at that, look. Just black.
Yeah. All the way around.
Oh, what a good job. That's weird actually. That's weird stuff, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
just silicon.
It's just disintegrated, eh?
Yeah.
Look at that. Oh man, that is pleasing. It just popped right off. One way or the other, I need to clean this all up. That's step one, right? Now, how hard is it to repair gel coat?
Well,
You think it's within my realm?
if you, well, have you got gel coat?
No.
You haven't? Oh, well, mate.
So all the caulking's been removed and everything's been cleaned up. These are what the cracks look like. See one or two kind of bad ones that are spreading. Overall though, they look kind of okay. So the plan is basically just dribble them out and then fill them with gel coat. So we had a little bit of help through a couple of these projects with a guy in the boatyard. He polished our hull, but he also kind of guided me through the process of this gel coat. So thank you, Kev, from Queen Anne's Battery in Plymouth, if you're watching this. Very nice. We really appreciate your help. One of the things he did was he drove me down the road to some bloke that he knew, gel coat and fiberglassing company, that helped me color match and helped me get some gel coat that I needed. Turned out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. So I've been mixing up gel coat to fill these cracks. We did it around yesterday. You can tell they mostly look okay. If I get that pretty close. It's almost cured. Some of them more so than the others. That guy's pretty good. But just about to mix up another batch. So what I've got here is the gel coat, which is almost the color we need. We had it color matched. We've got a little bit of cream pigment. So if I open this up and show you what this looks like. It's quite creamy in there. And then and the catalyst hardener. That's actually probably pretty good. Give it a mix. Give it a bit of a test. So I would say that needs a bit more cream. Just a touch. Getting close. This stuff is danger zone. So what we're going to do is take a few, so this needs to be 2%. As you can see, there's not a lot in there. So just do like
Looks like a pretty good match.
test, isn't it? Obviously we can clean that one out quite well enough.
So it's about to start raining, so we've put a tent up to, I think it actually is raining now, by the sounds of the rain on the tent. So yeah, we've put this up to try and protect the curing gel coat from the water, but we'll see how successful that actually is. And Stu is finally about to drill the through hole for the bilge pump that we started fitting back in December last year. So had a bit of a stressful morning trying to sort out our insurance, so we figured we'd take it up a notch and drill a hole in the side of the boat.
One of the last projects was to finally finish installing the big high output bilge pump that we started when we first bought the boat almost 12 months before. One of my philosophies is to take big risks in conservative ways, and that manifests itself by buying a massive bilge pump that's way overrated for the size of Delfino. I think it's 3,000 litres per hour. What that meant was drilling a really big through hull, luckily above the waterline, but it was kind of my first experience and that was a bit nerve-wracking. There we go.
It's quite a lot of wood.
One big ol' hole in the boat. I'm curious to measure these bits. It's interesting, this is not as thick here as I thought it would be.
I mean, it's quite far above the waterline, but
It is, yeah. It is.
I'd say that's like 8 mil.
Possibly, yeah. And then there's another skin, isn't there?
But it's quite a lot of core.
It is. Quite a lot of core.
That's a really big hole. Hey!
What I ended up doing to make sure that it was well sealed, I Dremeled out the wood core. I filled it with thickened epoxy, and then I put an old section of the hose in there to make sure that that epoxy was held in place. Removed that and then sanded it all before installing the through hull.
What's just happened to you?
Finally, the through hull is installed. So I need to pop these screws back in and then we can start filling the lads with things, which is great.
Yeah.
Great. Right. Shall we give it a test then?
What are we testing?
The bilge pump, which is just about to be installed. Sad times.
That is sad. Oh! That doesn't sound like it's going to pump out 4,000 gallons a minute or whatever ridiculous number it's meant to do.
Yes! It works!
Woo! 10 months later!
Oh, that is so good. In the end, it was lucky that we installed this big bilge pump. We were having a bit of a challenge finding insurers that would insure us for the kind of offshore sailing that we wanted to do. And the insurer that we did find, which had been absolutely great, but one of their requirements was that we had an oversized bilge pump. So yeah, it's great that we installed that. And great timing that we finished it when we did. So once we'd gotten it to cure, we sanded everything down and gave it a light polish. I think it looks pretty good, better than the cracks for sure. With the gel coat fixed, the last stage is to put the windscreen back on. Moving it in place was okay, but the volume of Sikaflex required to get it back in place was insane. It was everywhere. So we put masking tape on the cabin top, which was good, but we didn't put it on the windscreen, which was a terrible error. You always put masking tape everywhere. It's totally worth the effort. But we also did a few things to help increase the length, the life of the windscreen. We used butyl tape on the outside, edge to stop water getting in. We used Tef gel between the screws and the aluminium frame to stop it corroding. So I think we did a really good job overall. The white seal is now no longer leaking, which is great. It is leaking from somewhere else. It's a boat for you, but at least the white stuff is holding its own. Thanks for watching. Join us next week as the autumn weather turns and we make some hard choices about our winter plans.